on english.rfi.fr.
Hours Universal Time, you're tuned to Radio France International. And welcome to 60 minutes of news and current affairs from the French capital. Coming up in the next hour of the programme, all the latest news and analysis following yesterday's second round of voting in the second round of France's regional elections. Fabienne Jannick-Chevenel reports on why the far-right National Front of Marine Le Pen failed to secure any of the three regions where it led after last week's first round. But with a stronger power base, we analyse what the likely response will be from the French President François Hollande, his ruling Socialist Party, and from the conservative opposition Républicain Party of the former President Nicolas Sarkozy. We'll be hearing why so many Chinese supporters of a lawyer critical of the ruling Communist Party have travelled across China to protest in his favour in Beijing. Plus, the United Nations Development Programme releases its annual Human Development Report today, which this year is called Work for Human Development. We'll be talking to one of the authors. And after the half hour, barely 2 weeks away from the deadline issued by Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari to the Nigerian army to end the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast of the country, we'll be hearing how another Islamic sect, the Shiite group with its roots in Iran, has engaged the army in a deadly confrontation. The sports news today will be with RFI's Claire Broadhurst, and in Live on Live in our final 10 minutes of the programme, the special guest today will be the French far-right specialist Jean-Yves Camus, who will be analysing the results of this weekend's second round of the French regional elections and the defeat of the far-right National Front of Marine Le Pen. So stay with us here on Radio France International. This is Paris Live PM with me, Philip Turl. First of all, though, as every day, it's time for us to catch up with the latest RFI news, and reading it for us today is Alison Hurd.
The leader of the far-right Front National party here in France has responded with defiance to her party's defeat in yesterday's regional elections. Marine Le Pen said the two mainstream parties had conspired to keep the Front National out of power. Her movement failed to win control of any of the 13 regions in Sunday's polls, although it did win 3 times more local council seats than back in 2010. Led by the former President Nicolas Sarkozy, Les Républicains took 7 regions, and the ruling Socialist Party avoided an electoral debacle by securing 5. It failed, however, to hang on to Île-de-France, the capital and most populous region. Socialist Party leader Jean-Christophe Cambadélis said the results showed there was no room for complacency.
For the Socialist Party, these results are a success, but a joyless success. There's no joy when the abstention rate is so high. There's no joy when support for the extreme right is so high. The governments can't go on like this. We have to act now against poverty. This is the direction we need to take in the remaining 18 months of our presidency. Let us put all of our energy, all of our efficiency into stamping out equality. The fate of the nation is at stake.
C'est une grande cause nationale.
And staying with France, the French teacher who claimed he'd been attacked by a gunman claiming to be from the Islamic State group has admitted inventing the story. The teacher said he'd been attacked in a preschool class in Aubervilliers, a suburb of Paris, by a man citing so-called Islamic State. He said that the man had shouted, "This is for Daesh," an Arabic acronym for the Islamic State group, and that it was a warning. He said he was then stabbed before fleeing. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has pledged to tangibly stem a massive refugee influx to calm a rebellion in her conservative ranks. Speaking at her party's annual conference today, she said Germany would pursue measures to stem the flow of asylum seekers, slated to number around 1 million this year. However, despite demands to fix an upper limit on newcomers, Merkel insisted Germany would continue to live up to its humanitarian responsibilities and continue to help the world's desperate people, particularly those from war-ravaged Syria. One of China's leading human rights lawyers has gone on trial in Beijing over comments that he posted on social media criticizing the ruling Chinese party. Police drove away supporters of Pu Ji-chang from outside the court, along with media and diplomats who'd been hoping to attend the trial. Pu faces up to 8 years in prison. Campaigners say the trial was politically motivated. South Africa's currency, the rand, has strengthened in response to the naming of a new finance minister following days of market turmoil. Pravin Gordhan is the third person to hold the job in less than a week. He's vowed to stabilise the tottering economy after his predecessor lasted just 4 days in the job. The United States is evacuating its diplomatic staff from Burundi and has told other US citizens to leave as soon as possible. The State Department warning followed the worst violence in months of political unrest in the capital Bujumbura at the weekend, which left dozens of people dead. And the trial has begun in Burundi for 28 people accused over May's attempt to oust President Pierre Nkurunziza. The defendants include Burundi's former defense minister and 27 other senior military and police officials.
And Alison Hurd will be back with a full news update for us in just under 25 minutes here on Radio France International. If you've just joined us, welcome to Paris 9 PM with me, Philip Tull, with you for the next 55 minutes. So, France's far-right Front National failed to win a single region in yesterday's elections despite record results in the first round just over a week ago. In the Nord-Pas-de-Calais Picardy, the FN leader Marine Le Pen lost to Xavier Bertrand of the centre-right Les Républicains, who took a landslide 57% in a region that used to be a bastion of the left. The FN's anti-immigration, anti-Europe stance had already won over 2 of the region's towns, but Le Pen was unable to take it to the regional level. In just a few minutes, we'll be talking to RFI's Fabien Janik-Chevenel, who'll be joining me in the studio after a visit yesterday to Hénin-Beaumont, and we'll be talking to him in just a few minutes. First of all, though, we're going to go to talk about Saudi Arabia, where 17 women elected in municipal elections for the first time have been elected to public office in Saudi Arabia after winning seats in Saturday's election. That poll was the first in which women could vote and run as candidates, and they're a landmark step in a country where women are legally dependent on a male relative to approve almost all their major life decisions. Saudi Arabia's former King Abdullah, who died in January, had announced back in 2011 that women would be able to vote in this weekend's historic elections. He also took steps for women to play a larger public role, sending more of them to university and encouraging female employment. Rasha Hifti was amongst the 17 women who was elected this weekend.
This victory is the fruit of a huge amount of work on every level. Our participation in municipal elections is a huge step. We aim to participate in all the commissions and take part in the decision-making process. Our objective is that women benefit from this experience and in doing so, advance the women's movement. There has been reticence among those who say that women should not be allowed the voice. This first opportunity to participate is a new experience that we wish to repeat in the future, with even more participation from women and more female candidates.
That was Rasha Hifti, one of the 17 women who was elected this weekend in Saudi Arabia. Police in the Chinese capital, Beijing, some of them in plain clothes, have clashed with supporters of a human rights lawyer as he was tried over comments he made online criticizing the ruling Communist Party. Dozens of Pu Jiang's supporters traveled from across the country, some for thousands of kilometers, to protest outside the courtroom in Beijing. RFI's Jan van der Marde has been following the story, and he joins me now. Jan, first of all, why is this trial causing so many waves?
Well, Philip, this is one of China's most celebrated human rights lawyers, Pu Jiang, whose blogs have given him a certain amount of fame. We'll talk about him a little bit later. He was famous enough that some diplomatic representatives from Western nations tried to go to the court, like Dan Beers, the first secretary of the U.S. Embassy.
Lawyers and civil society leaders, such as Mr. Fu, should not be subject to continuing oppression. As a prosperous
Now, what happened here is that Mr. Beers tried to make some sort of statement protesting the trial, but he was overshouted, as you heard, by the Chinese security personnel, who then pushed him away, and at the same time that happened to many journalists and sympathizers who had come to the courthouse this morning. Let's now have a look at to who Mr. Pu is. I asked Michael Dillon, an independent China scholar in Exeter.
He's best known these days as a human rights lawyer who's been involved in the cases of quite a number of people who've found themselves up against the government because they've been arguing human rights cases. His political legal position goes back to 1989 when he was involved in the democracy movement protest, which led to the June the 4th military clampdown, and he's become really quite a blogger since then, operating on the Weibo site, which is something as close as it's possible to be to Twitter in China. And his posts are really quite sarcastic and certainly not subservient to authority.
So, Jan, is this something unique, this trial, or does it fit into a larger pattern of how the Beijing government deals with its critics?
Now, the case is far from unique, and at the moment there are some 300 to 400 known cases of dissidents behind bars in China. The violations they commit are called, at least in the West, expressions of opinion or religion, but in China many of them are regarded as crimes. Sophie Richardson of Human Rights Watch says that there seems to be an upsurge in political trials over the last year.
That is consistent with quite a few of the very politicized trials we've seen under Xi Jinping, starting with the fact that lawyer Pu Zhiqiang has done nothing to actually violate the law, yet he's been held for over 19 months. His trial has been marred by a number of procedural violations, and I think the incredibly aggressive behavior shown by police outside the courtroom this morning to diplomats and journalists and some of Pu's supporters shows just how hostile the Chinese government is to peaceful government critics.